The way you've been taught sales, the way I was taught sales is freaking garbage. I feel like I'm performing or I just don't like it. I dread it. Point is there's friction between you and the sales process. The way we've been taught is very much like the trophy is getting the sale. So what I want to teach you in this video is I'm calling it a conviction statement. And instead of you needing to nail the perfect script, be an expert at handling objection, I find with conviction statements, you don't have objections. You never have to feel inauthentic. You actually really enjoy it because it doesn't feel like a sales conversation. It feels like basically an educational opportunity. A conviction statement, for the most part, I call it like giving the lay of the land, right? Because if you look at it as like a sales problem, you are just kind of misguided. Like you're singing from the wrong hymn sheet or something like that. If you look at it as an education problem, then you're just trying to fill in gaps. Most of the time, filling in gaps comes from questions, and then it comes from just telling the truth. So what do I mean by that? First of all, to actually feel like you should even be telling somebody about your service, your product, whatever, if you're on a sales call, if you're just, I have coffee chats with people. And if you don't know who I am, by the way, my name's Colby. Let's grab coffee. I freaking love it. I'll drop the link down below. I'm on social to be social, not to freaking like pitch in the DMs and try and more or less work with people. I don't know. Like I need to know people first, which is why I do coffee chats versus sales. But I'll give you an example of what I mean by a conviction statement in a sec, but essentially just like before you even get to the conviction statement, before you tell them the lay of the land, you need to know the lay of the land first. You need to be like, do I understand what this person's true problem is? Because the reality is most people do not tell you the full truth when you ask the first question. So your skill then is in asking why. Okay, you feel like you have a leads problem. Why? Because I feel like we're not putting out enough content. Okay, why do you feel like content's the problem? Well, because blah, 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 blah. After a while, you get to actually the root problem. That's the thing you want to help with. And if you cannot help with that, you should refer. If you cannot help with that, you should tell them, right? And that's the beauty of a conviction statement is a lot of people will even know that they're not a good fit, but they'll carry on anyway because their mindset is success means sale. It doesn't mean helping, right? Which is a big problem. So in terms of the conviction statement, this is how it looks, right? And I'll give you an example, what I mean by giving the lay of the land so that more or less the prospect can choose, the person can self-select. Because if they don't believe that you're the right answer, you guys should not work together, right? It is not like, hey, neither of us believe we're the right answer, but because we're here together right now talking, then we'll just follow through with it. Like that is not a good idea, okay? So long as belief is there, one of the first conviction statements I would use back when I was selling marketing services, as an example, did it for over 10 years. And I did the scripts same as you are, right? I did the scripts where I was like, oh, okay, well, if they say this, then I'll say this. If they say this, then I'll say this. And I just found it to be ridiculously inauthentic. I found me really struggling to actually listen to them fully and actively because I was constantly trying to like put it into, well, then what will I say next? It's kind of the whole, waiting for your turn to speak. And I feel like that's more or less how we're all taught to do sales, which is like the exact opposite of human to human connection. And so a conviction statement would be, instead of saying, I have this thing that you desperately need and what I do is magic and I'm brilliant and all that sort of stuff, I would go the opposite way because I want to work with fewer people who stay for longer, which means trust is going to be a massive, like the most massive part of that. And so the last thing I want to do is start a relationship by saying, I'm better than you are. I know more than you, all that sort of stuff. I never liked that. And so after I got done with this whole script thing, because what I noticed was we were just fine at sales. We would get the sale, but then our churn was a little bit higher at the end. And to me, that is always a belief problem that very rarely when you're in the human to human business is a results problem unless it's like terrible. If the relationship is good, that can even kind of massage bad results because they still trust you. They still like your approach. They believe. Yeah. And so I found that if we followed the script, it didn't really matter if they believed or not because we were just good at sales. But belief matters so much if you want the relationship to stick, if you want them to trust you. Any business owner I've helped in the last couple of years, I'm like, who's your best client and why are they your best client? And universally, they will say, because they trust me. right? That is their number one answer, because they trust me, because I can suggest things and they just go for it, because they know I have their best interests at heart. Okay. So belief is massive. You should have belief before you sign them. And that's where the conviction statement comes in. You've waited long enough. I would tell them truthfully what's on the table. So I would say, hey, you know you need marketing, right? And what we're talking about here is something I've done for a long time. Everything I know how to do with marketing, I learned it, which means you can learn it too, right? The only difference between us is that I have 10,000 hours of having done it because I've done this for over 10 years. You don't. So what we're talking about is, do you want to invest in the time to get to the level I'm at now? Or would you rather pay me because I'm already at that level? Instead of telling them I'm brilliant at marketing, I basically just explained, and their subconscious is doing the work for them, of saying, oh man, this is more work than I want to commit to. And that's where the belief comes in. Hey, I'm on this call or I'm in this meeting because I already know I need something like what you're offering. Instead of you telling me that your offering is better than somebody else's, you just told me facts. It is so much work to be at the level you're at. And in their mind, they're like, I would much rather pay for it than do it myself, right? Because if you're talking to a high agency person, they understand like the amount of energy required is way higher than they want to commit to. And then the other one that I really found so useful as a conviction statement, because essentially what you'll have done with that conviction statement is they'll understand the lay of the land. They'll be like, there's more work involved than I want to do, so I do need to pay for it. So in almost every case, their next question will be like, okay, well, totally agree. How much does it cost? That kind of thing. And you've also built trust with them because you're not trying to trick them. You told them a fact, right? And so you're already coming from a place of honesty, whether you work together or not. If you do, it's going to be great because you're both on the same page, honest-wise. There's no wool over the eyes type thing. The second conviction statement, and this is from a good friend of mine, Casey. I won't share his stuff because he's pretty private, but I thought this was brilliant when it comes to, if they ask what the price is, typically you'll get objections on that's too expensive or it's not the right time or whatever it may be, right? So if you've already confirmed belief over here, you've more or less said, you know what, you're right, I need this, and I'm not willing to put in the effort to do it myself or to do it poorly, okay? So now it comes to price, and in a perfect world, you are not the cheapest, right? If you're the cheapest, then this doesn't necessarily apply. But the way Casey described it to me is, okay, you now agree that you need something. So you're essentially saying, I'm at point A and I want to get to B. So say you have to take a plane from A to B. You're going to get from A to B regardless, right? But we're not the only option. So it really comes down to experience. Do you want to be in economy in the plane, which means, you know, in the marketing world, it's like hiring a freelancer overseas or something. They're not going to be great at communication, but they'll probably get the job done, right? So do you just want the job done and you don't care about the experience? Then we're not for you, right? I can refer you to the website Fiverr or Upwork or whatever it may be. Then there's first class. First class is absolutely getting the job done, but with an emphasis on experience. Same plane, completely different experience. Communication's great. We will be ready to respond to you when you need us. We will be super helpful in like how you're served, the manner, all that kind of stuff. And then there's private, right? And private is basically a first class experience, but just with added luxury. And the majority of people don't need added luxury because first class feels just right. It's kind of like Goldilocks, right? Like Papa Bear, Mama Bear, Baby Bear sort of thing. First class is typically just right. So is it the cheapest? Absolutely not. But that's because we're providing an experience, whereas economy is just providing A to B. We're providing A to B plus experience, and private is A to B plus experience and luxury. What have you done this whole time when you use an example like that? A, everybody understands plane travel, okay? Everybody knows the different cabins, they know the different classes, all that kind of stuff. And so you are creating imagery in their mind that basically allows them to look inward and say, well, I'm better than economy. I want a better experience than economy at the very least, but I don't need private, right? And so how can you justify your pricing You lean into experience and you use an analogy to do it. Those two conviction statements right there, using the plain analogy and then saying, you can learn everything I've learned because I learned it, which means you can too, but just using that as a way to identify the effort. Those two things do so much work on their own that I would be absolutely shocked if you still had to convince an objection handle, right? Because you're not saying anything other than what you believe in and what you know to be true. You don't have to be brilliant at sales. You don't have to be super charismatic. You don't have to be like, have all the little trade secrets and all that sort of stuff. Because if you use just those two conviction statements or a version of that aligns with you, they get to decide that they want to go all in with you, right? And the final thing is the highest earners I know are really good at saying no to the wrong thing. And so if you've gone through those and you still need to convince somebody and all that sort of stuff, I would have you encourage them to look elsewhere. That was the final thing I did, is if they still had doubts after all that, I would say, well, have you looked at people in our space? You know, I don't really deem competition as a thing, but have you looked at other people who provide what we provide? Or at least say they do? And if they said no, then I said, well, then I would be unethical if I told you not to look around and make sure that we're the right choice. Because I don't want to work with someone who chooses us because we're right in front of them or because they like what we hear. I want someone to choose us because we are right. And that's kind of the final piece. If you're able to do that, you've eliminated desperation. You have to be willing to say no to something if all the ingredients are not there. And if you are still with me in this video and you need some level of like, but how can I ensure that it works? First of all, certainty doesn't exist, but I can tell you that when I took this approach with people, that was how I retained clients for 5, 6, 7 years. When I was selling marketing services, we sold the exact same thing as hundreds of other agencies because it was white labeled. And those people, which I knew had actual data because I went to the team who provided the white label service and asked, were keeping their clients on average 6 to 8 months. Selling the exact same freaking thing, we were able to keep clients for 6 years at a higher price point than a lot of those people. So if you need any evidence or proof that it starts before they say yes, or the power of belief, then I don't know what else to say. Because when it comes down to it, they need to believe to stick around. People who do not believe but just say yes anyway because they're fine parting with the money for a while, or they want to be able to dictate terms, or whatever it may be, those people are unsuitable for long-term service. They're just that you cannot hold on to them. And so if you're of the opinion like I am, that my energy is finite, I would much rather spend it with people who believe and wait a little bit longer, knowing that it will be worth the effort, because that same person who that other competitor could have sold was a 10x version client for me because they stayed for 6 years rather than 6 months. So I think that math is right. But I hope this video helps. I am by no means a sales guru. I don't really think of what I do as sales. I just like speaking to humans on the other side, and I like to ask them questions. I like them to tell me what they need. And if it's something I feel like I can help with, I tell them that. I feel morally obligated to help them. If it is not, then I don't. And that's pretty simple. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Otherwise, I appreciate you being here, and we'll see you in the next one.